Hello there and welcome back in to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hyde, and I'm so excited that you are joining us today. Now, if you have ever started a direct selling business, you would have heard the R word drilled into you so much that you felt a cringe perhaps when you thought about it. The word I'm talking about here is recruiting. And we all know that this is a critically important part of growing any direct selling business, whether you are in party plan, network marketing, or you identify as MLM. But the bottom line is that for vast majority of people, this is a scary topic. Scary because number one, what if people say no? Scary because we're afraid that we don't have the authority and we don't have the right to ask. And scary, I believe, also because for many of us, we aren't yet convinced that we should be asking other people to join a business that we're still growing ourselves. So in this episode, I've pulled in the beautiful Christine Tylee. Christine has an incredible story, and this is not her first time on this podcast. If you want to go back and listen to her previous episode, I highly recommend that you do, and I'll put it in the show notes. But the thing I love about Christine is she herself admits that not only was she shy starting this business, not only did she literally vomit before she did her first few parties and demonstrations, but she also had a really rocky start for the first 2 years of her business until she mastered the art of recruiting. Christine, in this episode, will talk about that journey. But today, she has a business that just over the last 12 months alone has over 7,000 people in her team. She turned over a $20 million revenue or over a $20 million revenue last year, and she has grown herself an empire of a business. But she started somewhere. And she talks about that somewhere because for her, this was a really scary process as well. And it wasn't until she mastered the art of recruiting, and she gives you the tips and tricks to do this right from the bare bones of growing a business. Not from the perspective of someone who's built an empire, but from the perspective of somebody who knows what it's like to start from the very beginning. Christine shares that story. She shares some tips and tricks along the way. And I know that you're going to walk away from this episode with some implementable things and also a different mindset around recruiting. So if this has ever been a challenge for you, or there's anyone in your team or anyone you know in this industry who has struggled with the R word, please share this episode with them. We'd love to impact more people. That's our mission. So help us to help other people grow their businesses as well. I know this episode is very timely for many, many people. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over now to the interview that I did with Christine. I know you're going to love this. She is one of my favorite people in the world. I love Christine. I know you're going to love her too. So grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so excited to be joined for a second time by the beautiful Christine Tylee. Thank you so much for joining us again, Christine.
It is such an honor to be back. I love it here. Thanks for having me back.
It's such an honor. And look, there is a reason that you're in here. I mean, you have achieved so much in your business. And if anyone listened to the previous podcast episode with you, you spoke about your incredible story growing your business in direct selling. I've got to say, hold the trophy for the first and only person that's actually made me cry on a podcast episode. So thank you for that.
Dubious honor.
Oh, no, it's really funny because Greg would have cracked way sooner than me, but you did a very good job there. But look, in all honesty, you've got an incredible story and your passion for this industry just shines through everything that you do. So thank you so much for that. And if anyone hasn't listened to that episode, you do need to go back and you need to listen to that one because it's one of my very favorites. And it really is a very special story. But Today we've got you back because special things are happening in your world, and I really feel like they're impacting the world of many people around you. And that is that you, being an expert recruiter, have also just recently released your first book, which is such an amazing accomplishment. So congratulations, first of all, Christine.
Thank you so much. It's very exciting.
Yes, I'm excited. And I know that many of our members have already purchased this book. I was just saying to you that I was on a coaching call with one of our beautiful Inner Circle members yesterday, and she was saying how impactful reading this book has already been for her. So I'm very excited for this interview. But just very quickly, for those that don't know who you are, I think we met I'm going to say like maybe 18 months ago now. We were introduced through a very special friend of both of ours, Lisa McGuinness-Smith, who's also been a podcast guest here and done lots of trainings with our members. But Christine, you are quite unique because you are not just a leader in the industry, a leader in the company that you're with, but in addition to that, you by yourself grew a team of almost 7,000 people, and in your last 12-month period, brought in a revenue of over $20 million. And I just want to really quickly give you such a huge congratulations for that, because that in itself is a massive accomplishment. And so well done.
Thank you. Definitely a group effort, isn't it? As a direct sales team, I'm so blessed to have so many amazing people I work with.
And this is the thing. This is such an incredible industry in that way. It is a group effort, and you really lean in on that. You are amazing at leading your group, but you're also an expert when it comes to recruiting. And that's what I really wanted to chat with you about today. It is what your book is about, titled Growing Your Direct Sales Team. It is all about that recruiting process. And let's face it, the R word is something I think a lot of people get, kind of the chills up the back of the spine when they think about. It is one of the things that people struggle with the most in this industry. And honestly, it's the question I get asked the most. How do I recruit better? And so I thought, why not pull in somebody who's not just an expert, but you're actually living it. You're doing it every day. This is how you grow your business. And I'm really excited to chat with you about this today. So again, thank you so much for joining us. But do you want to just quickly tell everyone just a little bit about you very quickly for those that haven't heard the previous episode and don't know who Christine Tylee is?
Sure. I'll give you the couple of minute highlight reel, shall I? Well,
that sounds good.
I've been in the industry for 20 years now, but I did start out pretty slow. My first 2 years, I threw up before every party and literally didn't recruit anyone into my team for that first 2 years. And then I went along to a national event, a big conference, and I was so inspired. And I went away and thought, right, I really see the potential here. I really want to do this. And it turns out I was still pretty crap at it. The first 10 people I decided to recruit all said no. And I thought, surely there's got to be somewhere I can go to where I can find a process for this. And I couldn't really find anything. So I just started trial and error and with my own intuition, and eventually won the next year's national award for recruiting champion and set the global record for the company I'm with. And all of that was in the space of a year. But fast forward a little bit, and I had 3 children. I was growing a big multi-million-dollar business. I was very, very happy. And my precious 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia and was initially given only 2 weeks to live. I'll fast forward to the good bit. She's fine. She's been in remission for 4 years now. But it was going through that process that I really understood the gift that I was given with my business. I was the only mother on the kids oncology ward that was able to keep bringing in an income. So we didn't have financial stress on top of emotional distress. And then 18 months into her journey battling leukemia, I had a series of strokes and aneurysms on the brain and was told I would probably be able to talk again, thank God, but had a long process. They didn't think I'd necessarily be able to run or play any kind of sport again, and running my business was going to be a big challenge. And again, that was another lesson that the universe decided to send my way, that, again, the blessing of my business. Because when I wasn't able to do a lot, you know what? I was surrounded by a tribe of women who lifted me up and really rose to the occasion. And I am incredibly blessed and grateful for that. So a couple of times in my life, I really understood this is an industry that can make a massive, massive difference for people. Mm-hmm. And that's when I thought, right, I'm going to start writing a book. People have to know this. And I started with my blog, and I realized it's not deep enough. I can't really sink my teeth into this and give people everything that they need to go from fear of recruiting to growing an empire. So I thought, okay, I've got to write it all in a book so that people can pick it up and learn from everything that I've been through, learn all the trial and errors, see what works for them. I've put in, while Sophie was sick and I was recovering, I studied a whole bunch of positive psychology as well. Mm-hmm. And I put all of the lessons that I learned from there that I thought were most applicable to our industry. And so between my experiences, my 20 years of success in the industry and everything that I learnt going through those processes, it's all funneled with so much love into the book so that I can perhaps help somebody who needs that bit of extra income for their family, or is going through their own health struggles and maybe can't go back to a career that they used to have, or is a carer for a family member or a friend or a child, and just decided that, you know what, quality time is more important than hours in an office, but hey, they still need an income. And our industry is absolutely the answer for that. But people need a little bit of hand-holding and a little bit of nurturing and a little bit of extra love. And I felt that the blog just wasn't taking it far enough and deep enough. And, okay, a book, that's the answer. And I finally finished it.
I love that. It's super awesome. And you have put together a really beautiful book. I love it's actually a very practical book as well. So, you know, you've got spaces in here for people to fill things in as they go. So it's doing the do as you go through. But one of the things that really strikes me about you, Christine, is just how determined you are. You didn't mention just there, which you did talk about in the previous podcast episode, about how you were given these diagnoses and instead of going, okay, you went no. And you said, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to do differently. You are now a karate champion, right? And I just need to hear the update. Where are you at with that right now? Because every time I talk to you, I feel like there's like been another, you know, sweep of awards come through and accomplishments by your whole family in this space. You didn't just say, I will walk again. You went, I'm going to be a black belt in karate.
I don't think my neurologist has ever met anyone quite like me. When they told me that, you might not live through the night and you're probably not going to ever run or play sport again if you do, I didn't hesitate. There was no processing that. It was like, I may have sworn at him, which I won't repeat, but
I love that. That's great.
I'm going to get a black belt in karate.
Person who's going to save my life. Yeah.
No way. You see, I'd already learned from Sophie. She'd already defied the odds. I'm here learning from my 6-year-old how to not bow down to the doctor gods. I don't bow down to them. Sorry. So I guess I've always had a bit of a stubborn streak, and I'm told it made me a very challenging toddler. But
Yes, but it's also made you an incredible businesswoman. And I guess what I kind of want to glean from you is, has that determination been something you just naturally had, or do you sometimes have to work on that? Have there been times where in your business you've gone, I feel like I could just sit on the couch today and there's so much stuff going on in my world. I don't necessarily feel like tackling a business today, but you did it anyway. And I'm just curious to know, were there times that you actually had to give yourself the pep talk to have that determination, or were you just naturally, that was just who you were?
I do have a naturally very stubborn streak. It's almost like if somebody tells me you can't do it, that's like a gift to me. It's like, just watch me, buddy. But of course I'm human. There were days when I was so devastated because I went from, just talking about me personally, I went from a high-flying business person who could, stand up in front of crowds of hundreds and give a speech to I struggled to be able to talk for a period of time. And there was no guarantees, despite my stubborn response, that I would ever be able to do what I'm doing now and have a conversation without lengthy lags while I was trying to process. What was that word again? And, of course, that's just devastating. And I think I was kind of lucky that I decided to, do a couple of courses. I did one through Harvard, one through Yale, just not full degrees, just subjects of them. But I picked and chose ones that I thought were going to give me the best kind of information. I'm so glad I did, because I had proven scientific methods that I could call on to make a difference. And some of the things that I did with Sophie, I applied to myself. And I've put a lot of hints and tips and ideas and ways to think about your brain and how you process information in the book to help people learn from that, so that when they have a day, like I'm often coaching a team member through, it's really disheartening if you get 3 no's in a row. You feel, if you're not taught how to deal with that, it can be feeling really personal and very difficult to overcome. And perhaps because I'd learnt how to overcome those kinds of hurdles through my business, perhaps I was more prepared to deal with life when, those really massive hurdles were thrown at me. So maybe this business is kind of setting us up for
training ground.
Yeah, exactly. For being the best person we can be in life. And so if that's the case, then seeing this business and learning how to recruit and learning how to master your mindset in that process, who knows what it's setting you up for outside of business as well. And I truly believe that what we have here, the opportunity within direct sales, is multi-leveled in what it can do for a person and for a family.
Yeah. It's such an amazing way to look at things, Christine. And I really appreciate that angle. It's so true that, and I've spoken to you before about my very first experience, not just in this industry, but also with cold calling, and, how that was probably one of the best training grounds I could have ever got. It was one of the hardest jobs I could have ever done, but learning how to handle the no was great, not just in the business, but in so many different ways. But I really love what you said about that and how this industry, not only supported you through all of those things, it built you a community of people that stood around you, but it also helped you have the strength to get through some of those times, is really, really powerful. Now, I know that for a lot of people listening to this, I know recruiting is one of their greatest challenges. Let's face it. it's confrontational. If you're currently sold on it, it's going to be very hard for you to sell somebody else. I know that's a big problem for a lot of people. But Christine, you've come up against, with almost 7,000 people in your team alone. You have worked with a lot of people. You do a lot of one-on-one coaching. What are some of the most common mistakes you see that get in the way of people recruiting successfully?
Oh gosh, there's number one seems to encompass a huge number of subsets within. But the biggest mistake is that people just don't even try. To be perfectly honest, they just completely leave it out. It's like it's like the elephant in the room. I'm not even going to talk about this business because then you'll feel like I'm trying to recruit you. It's like, well, that's a problem. So I've been there. I felt like, I don't want to be that spammy person. I don't want to be the one that people cross the road to avoid, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to have to find a way. If I'm going to get the goals that I've set for myself, I have to find a way that feels comfortable for me, but I can't just ignore it. That's not going to get me anywhere. And so I share in the book all the different things that I tried, but number one is they won't even try. And number two is if they find somebody who is interested, they've shown interest, they won't even follow up. They don't even call back. They don't even send a text message. It's like they're so afraid that one person that they've finally found that might be interested might say no, that they won't even find out. And when I, talk to them about the fact, aren't you kind of being a little bit rude? They've said they're interested and that they would like some information. You're just doing the world's worst customer service if you don't even follow up. And sometimes just shifting the way you view what you're doing and how you're treating the business is all it takes to shift what you're willing to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I think it's that mindset around if recruiting is about doing something for me instead of it's almost like a forgetting that you're helping somebody else. You're giving somebody else an opportunity. And it's almost like we need to sell ourselves first, right? I feel like both of those problems, those mistakes come from not being sold ourselves. We don't yet truly believe the benefit of being in this business. And so sometimes we need to sort of sit down and, one of the techniques that we talk about inside of our Rise Up Inner Circle is with any of these things is to sit down and write out 50 reasons why this is a must for you, for the people around you, for the world around you, for the legacy you leave when you leave this world behind. Why is this a must that you do this? Because sometimes the person that needs the convincing is actually the person that's trying to do the convincing. And people can smell it if they know that you're not 100% convinced that this is right. And I really do believe when it comes to recruiting, this is one of the great challenges. And I know for you, Christine, your recruiting technique often comes back to those stories you tell about the impact it's had on you. Because really stories are what we buy, right? But how many times have we stopped and thought about what are some of the things this business has done for me that I could openly share? Because we think people are not interested in that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, especially somebody new to the business thinks, I can't recruit like my upline because she or he has got so much more experience and so much more success. So I like to bring it back to teaching people how I recruited my first few people. Because then all of a sudden it's like, she didn't have success yet. So what did you do? How did you get it started? And everybody can be successful no matter where they're at in their business and how little they've achieved. Because you can sometimes, if you share a big story, for example, I have a lot of, new people who say, my team leader's been to, China or Japan or, some international trip, or they've got a car. And it's like, it doesn't feel real to that consultant on the ground and to the people who are thinking about maybe joining. It's like, oh, yeah, but I'm not going to be that good. What you have to do is make it about what's in it for them that they could achieve straight away. And I like to, get them thinking about things that are little extra luxuries. And in the current economic climate, the idea of having that bit of extra cash to go out to dinner or to go to the movies or to maybe have a massage. And if you can relate it to, from my first event or party, whatever you call it, I got enough money to go and treat myself to a massage. Everybody in the room is suddenly going, maybe I should be thinking about this. Because it's real and it's believable and it's relatable, and that changes everything.
The interesting thing there is I think we think sometimes it's got to be really big, right? Like I have to, I was motivated by, you talked about being motivated by that first event you went to and seeing people, up on stage and receiving awards and doing these amazing things. And you are naturally a high achiever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone you're talking to has the same motivations. And those simple things you just talked about there, maybe the luxury of having just a little bit of income for you to spend, the ability to go to the movies, go for dinner, those little things. It's about understanding what makes them tick, right? Rather than what, the big picture, which may come later on. But for a lot of people, especially those you're talking to initially, it's not necessarily their motivator, and getting that motivator for them is critically important, right?
Absolutely. And, lately we've even been having people that are needing that extra income just to be able to pay the mortgage now that, rates are going up, and that's not just impacting Australia, that's a global issue. So wherever you're listening from, it could just be that you can say, this is how I am providing for my family so that we can maintain the lifestyle that we love. And this is a way to, solve those economic challenges that people have. So it doesn't even have to be about the things that feel unreachable and intangible that hopefully inspire them down the track to strive for a trip or a car or something. But I've found that bringing it back down to what people in the room could see happening within a week of joining, that immediate, fast gratification, I feel like that's one of the big keys.
Yeah. And I would say that's also a big key to keeping them in the business too, right? Because one of the things in the back of my mind is, okay, we can recruit, we can convince them to sign up, but we also want to keep them when we want them to grow a business. And that in itself is a very different skill set. So one of the questions I had for you was actually, and I feel like we sort of covered off on this because anyone listening to this right now is probably going, okay, I get Christine is probably a little bit like me. If you feel like, I'm shy, I'm not a really outgoing person. I don't naturally feel very comfortable approaching people, and doing parties are hard enough. A lot of people since COVID have stopped doing parties because they got a reason not to do them. And now there's that feeling of, I've got to go back into doing demonstrations and events again. But it's quite confrontational for me. And I just want to throw something out there. Christine, you were that person. You are a self-confessed shy person, and yet you have still been an incredibly successful recruiter and grown, an amazing business. So can you just give a few little, I guess, hints or tips to those people who maybe are at the beginning around what you did when you didn't yet feel you had the credibility, you hadn't grown a business yet, and, you might have been thinking, I've only been in this business for a short period of time. How do I convince somebody else that they should be joining? What did you do in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned right at the start, I did literally throw up before my first parties. I had such bad anxiety. And so I put quite a bit of effort into the book to cater for people who don't feel like they're the life of the party, that they can just attract people to them because they're so awesome. And sometimes I found the best leaders and the best people in the business are people who are shy and have had to work a little harder perhaps to find a way to make it work. And that was me. So I realized I used to be a primary school teacher by trade. And I thought, okay, what bits of my background can I bring to this that feel authentic to me? And I realized I used to love running show and tell at school, with the kids. So I thought, if a 6-year-old can do show and tell, I can do show and tell. So I thought I'll make it fun and interactive, and I'll pass things around that make it tangible for people. And so I'd have a little show and tell box where I would talk about the things that I was benefiting from the business. And it made it so much easier for me to pick up, say, for example, I was saving for a wedding. So I picked up, a little toy bride, and, I'm doing this to save for my wedding. And also, a credit card. I managed to pay off my credit card debt finally, and just a couple of things, just 2 or 3 little things about what you're getting out of the business. And for some reason, I found it easier doing a show and tell than just saying, join this business because you might be able to pay off your credit card debts. Like, that's not so much fun. So I kind of made it a little bit of fun. And I realized from my teaching background that 70% of the people in the room are visual learners. And so I started dedicating a third of my display to the business opportunity. And, I'd have little scrolls of information people could take, and they were beautifully bowed up and enticing. And I'd have a sign about the business opportunity, and I'd have information that people could take, and I'd have my little show and tell box. It's amazing how much just making sure you're focusing on it in some way visually can start to spur some interest. And I didn't want to have to ask people in those early days, are you interested? Would you like some information? So I had to tick the box in like a lucky draw, like a door prize. Yeah. And there was a box on it that they could tick if they would like to have a bit more information. And I made it sound casual. I didn't say about the business opportunity, about sharing this with your family, sharing some of these beautiful products with your family and friends. It doesn't sound too scary. And I had quite a few people tick the box. So I thought, this is easy. I'm not doing anything hard. I just had to be a little bit creative with the ways that I would bring it to life without it being too scary or too confrontational. And I've put into the book so many different ideas to help people bring it up and bring it to life and make it fun in ways that are not too scary, like bring in games and all sorts of different things that people can try to feel out what works for their personality. Because I think sometimes we're told you will recruit this way, this is what you will say, this is what you will do, this is how you will follow up. And it's like, doesn't work for me, sorry. And you've got to find out what works for you.
Yeah. And look, that is such an important point. And, you know that the way we teach social media is simply that everyone has their own recipe, and we want to help you formulate that recipe. There's no one way to do social media. There's no one way to recruit. There's no one way to grow a business. And I get really sick and tired, to be perfectly honest, of people standing up saying, this is the formula, do it this way. It's like, that's your formula. You worked that out for you, for your personality, for your audience. And by anybody else being told to do that, you're setting them up to fail and to feel like it's their fault and there's something wrong with them. So, if you've tried a formula, you've tried a method and it hasn't worked, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not because you're not as good as the next person. It's because it's not your formula. And, I found this too in the very early days of my sales career. Before I moved into the marketing role I was given a script. Now, in all seriousness, Christine, this was a 5-page script that took 35 minutes, and I was tested every month by my manager, and I had to repeat this script verbatim. This was my sales script. And so when I walked in and I sat down in front of a potential new customer, I would tell them, and part of the script was even getting the appointment. And it would be literally a matter of, I would go from start to finish But I had to know the script so well that if this person got me off track, I knew exactly where I was and I'd come straight back to it and pull them back. So what I wasn't doing was building relationship. What I wasn't doing was being myself. What I was doing was being scripted and following somebody else's process. Now, whilst it was a very successful process in the sense that there was some psychology involved, what it took away from everyone in this particular company was the ability for them to be their unique selves. And so rather than it being a guide to help you and to use as a tool, it became this thing that everybody got so focused on that it actually set more people up to fail than to succeed. Luckily for me, I had I was similar to you. I'm very determined, and I was not going to fail, and so I set things up so that I learnt this script verbatim. I could repeat it, no problems. But when I went into my meeting, and that manager was not there, I was taking the psychology of what I was taught, but I was making it my own. And it wasn't until those moments where I realized those tweaks where my personality could actually be inserted and I could learn about them, and I applied those things, that I started to see this success come in. But it took a level of confidence to say, I'm not trusting that, I'm trusting my gut. And, I think there's so much in that. And I did notice too, I'm going to bring up one of those things you just mentioned, Christine, because you actually do give a ton of different ideas in here, and I love that. And one of them that you talk about, I was giggling to myself because I'm a little bit like this too. You talked about old school tools, and one of them being paper forms, physical hard copy documentation. I really have to ask, why and how do you use these? Do you still currently use these from time to time?
I do sometimes, yeah. In this digital age, I feel like we've lost a little something with the personalization and the connection that we can have with some of the old school tools. And just having a plain basic paper order form gives you a few things that make it feel a little bit more authentic and personal than just pressing a few buttons on an iPad. And I think partly when they write out a form, it gives you an opportunity to have them tick a box again, which I came back to. That's just an easy tool. But even something as simple as giving them a receipt with a thank you sticker on it, because these days most orders are shipped direct to customers in a lot of companies. There's not a lot of opportunity to have that kind of little bit of extra customer care anymore. So just by handing over a receipt is something that feels just nice, and just that personal connection. So simple things like that can make a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good reminder that just because technology has moved, it doesn't necessarily mean we can't bring in some of the old school tools and techniques. And I really actually truly believe that physical forms are really powerful. It's funny, when we do an event in person, if we are promoting any of our products, we will have a code on the screen for people, but I still hand out hard copy forms. And part of the reason for that, there's two reasons. Number one, it's a physical thing that you're doing, which means that there's more mental commitment to it when they're doing that. They're actually physically involving their body whilst involving their mind, rather than just typing into a digital screen. The other thing is that it requires them to hand it to you, which means you get the conversation, you get to meet them and say hello. And if you really think about it, what we do in our business is very similar. We're recruiting people into our courses. And so, if I speak at an event and we happen to do a recruit drive on that particular day, I want people to come up and talk to me, because I know you are more likely to get better results by working with me if you and I have a relationship than if you've simply gone online and filled in a form and you're always just that person that knows me digitally. Yeah. And you make a really good point there, Christine. A lot of what the companies do now is, of course, deal with the customer direct. They're shipping direct. It's no longer a matter of, I don't know about you, I remember the days when you would you'd order everybody's order and it would come to your house, and then you would pack them all individually and you'd have to drive to their house and hand them their order. Did you ever have to do that?
For most of my career, it's very recent that we've moved on from that. So, yeah, absolutely.
And in some ways I kind of missed that because it was the opportunity to ask them, look, I'm really excited. There's a new product coming next month and, would you like me to tell you about it or bring you a sample when it comes out? We miss that opportunity now because we don't have that same physical contact we used to have. Yeah. Which kind of brings me to the next question. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here, so I'm going to hand back to you for a sec. But I really want to know, how do you use technology now? Because, hard copy forms are great. Going old school can be good, but we also know that we need to move with the times a little bit. And you have used technology in your business. How do you use technology now to help you recruit better?
Yeah, absolutely. It's become such an essential part of our business. And in a way, I was very well prepared for the pandemic because when Sophie was diagnosed, that was in 2016, so well before the pandemic hit, I was in forced isolation with her, stuck in hospital for the best part of 2 years. So I had to learn the skills that everybody else had to learn in 2020, in 2016. And I was a little bit ahead of the curve, I guess you'd say. And I'd come across these fabulous tools that people have now, many of you have discovered, but, Zoom. You can do a party on Zoom, I discovered, with hosts that didn't want to, to miss out on having me, but knew I had to be in isolation with Sophie. So I just Zoomed in and they were supporting me in that way. Canva, creating tiles is like this magic tool. It's brilliant. And so those are two key ones. But things like Google Forms is another great way of having those lucky door prize or SurveyMonkey, either of those, having that lucky door prize mentality where they get to tick the box. It's so satisfying to tick something and giving away a prize as people come into your online events. That's a great way to get that interaction started. So having tools like that. Even I found online jigsaw puzzles and online bingo generators, and being able to put my recruiting messages within those tools to make it fun online. But what they were doing is when they finished their jigsaw puzzle, it was a message about joining the business or something that you get out of the business. And I could have 10 people do 10 different ones, and they all had to post their finished result, and it was 10 different messages. It's just a fun way of bringing to life that opportunity, that sparking that interest for the business using online tools like that. And of course, I absolutely rely on you and Greg to keep me up to date on everything that's going on in the social media world, because I stopped being able to keep up to date with it. And but we cannot survive these days without Facebook. And many people love Instagram as well, but they are an essential tool for business. There's no denying that these days. So I try to keep up to date and check in with you and Greg when changes happen. It's like, oh my God, now what have I got to discover?
I know. Can you imagine living it? So I love that you do such a beautiful combination of both things, and you take things at your own pace, but you're always learning and implementing. I think that's the big thing. And I just, anyone who's listening to this, I just really want to encourage you. I heard a really interesting podcast today where one of the biggest false pieces of information people are given about that is essential when it comes to building a business is that you should always be learning. And the truth is that whilst learning is important, it's actually not what helps you grow a business. It's that you should always be implementing. And so, I love what you've done with that. You've gone, okay, I'm picking up pieces of information. I know digital world is important, but, let's just find out first of all, how can we tackle Zoom? How can we do that? How can we, you don't have to get it all right. And I'm sure that when you did that, because you were forced out of necessity, you didn't wait for perfect. You got in there and you had a crack and you worked it out as you went. And that helped you get ahead of that curve, which is really powerful. And Christine, I'd love for you to share, for our listeners right now, what are your top 3 tips for them to grow bigger and better teams?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is it's okay to push out of your comfort zone and get started somewhere, and to start trialing and do all different things and find out what works for you. That's most important, and not to just go, okay, well, what I was told to do didn't work, and think, okay, recruiting doesn't work for me. Find what works for you. And, there's heaps of ideas in the book that might get you started and inspired. Mm-hmm. But then I think one of the tragedies in our industry is that so many people, once they've joined a business, do nothing with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why go to all the effort to find these people to join and then do nothing with them? So the fastest way to grow is to support the people that you find. It's like, a bird in the tree is worth, what is it? I'm going to get this wrong. Bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I'm shocking you saying.
Something like that.
Right. Yeah. I think you get what I'm trying to say. It's like you've got one, you found one, nurture that person while still looking for more. But if that person then goes on and starts to recruit, then you're growing faster. And sharing with them the benefits of the business and, the things that they can get out of it by finding other people to join, then you can suddenly start to duplicate really quickly. So it's not just about finding them, it's about loving and supporting and nurturing the ones that you have, so that then they start to grow, and then that's how you can grow an empire really quickly.
Yeah, that's really, and in all honesty, I was sitting here before thinking, okay, it's one thing to recruit, but it's kind of that churn and burn mentality. We see that happen a lot, where it's like, I get them in, and then I hear people complaining because I recruit them and then they do nothing. Well, they don't know what to do. They're looking to you for that. So, that's really important, to be focusing on those people. And really, if you think about it, that duplicating, get 5 people to recruit one more person is a whole lot easier when you've got those people and you've established a relationship with them, and you can now give them some tips and techniques. They go out, do that work, and suddenly, it makes your life so much easier. So yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know a lot of our listeners are wondering, how can I get Christine's book? If I want to read this, I want to go through the process, I want to do the activities, how can they get hold of your book?
Probably the easiest way is to go directly to my blog, which is all one word, directsalesinspiration.com, because it's not hard to find it there. It's the first thing you'll see on any page, and it will click you through to the best places to find it anywhere in the world. So wherever you're from, you'll be able to find a link to it through there, and it will take you through to the sites in your country so that it's shipped locally.
And we'll put that link to your website as well, or your blog, in the show notes with this podcast episode as well. But Christine, just before we wrap up, I've got some fun questions to ask you. You've answered these before, but I'm going to ask them again because that's how we do the podcast.
I love it.
The first one, which is kind of funny, yeah. And now you have to give us a different answer for this one, though. Now, I asked you, what's your favourite book to add to the Accelerator book list? Obviously, we love Christine's book, Growing Your Direct Sales Team. But give us another book. What's another of your favourite reads?
This was so hard because I set myself a challenge this year to read 50 books in a year, and I'm already up to 40. So I've been churning.
Oh, wow.
I've been reading, so it was a little hard to narrow it down. But I ended up going with 168 hours. You have more time than you think. And it's by Laura Vanderkam. And honestly, it made me reassess what I was doing, what's valuable to keep doing, and how to be more effective with everything I was doing. And I have made huge changes to my life since I read this book on New Year's Day. Huge changes. So I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Sounds like a really valuable read. And I know right now, if more than ever before, I feel like being time poor is getting worse. Is that just my imagination, or is that just the world we live in? It's the older you get, the more time poor we become and the faster time seems to go.
Yeah. So it's a quantum shift in the way you will think about time and what you're doing with your life if you read that book. It's brilliant.
All right.
Brilliant.
Well, it's interesting because the book we're reading as a group inside of our Rise Up Inner Circle right now is the 5 a.m. Club.
Oh.
And there's a lot of – have you read that one?
No, I haven't, but it's on my list.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Well, it's a really great read. Most of the people in there, because we only do 2 chapters a week as a group and then we come back and discuss. And it's really funny because most people are really struggling to stop reading. But the interesting thing is just that shift of mentality around the way we use our time. So, it's I'm finding that very interesting. But I'm going to check this book out. This sounds very, very interesting and definitely very valid right now. So thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
Now, the next question, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Okay, I know I was probably meant to say something different because I said this last time, but it's still so true. I still want to have the power to wave a magic wand and have people believe in themselves.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite answers, by the way. So I'm glad you haven't changed it.
I thought, maybe I should do something cooler. But it's like, no, that's what I want.
That is cool. I think that's amazing. And it's very selfless, but that would be amazing. And I think in so many ways, this would be a better world if people did believe in themselves.
I know it would.
People would tear each other down a little less, don't you think?
I think so. More understanding, more willingness to listen to the other side. That would be nice.
Absolutely. Now, next question is your favourite quote.
This was hard too because I gave you my favourite last time. But
your second favourite.
Okay. I came up, this was hard, but I narrowed it down to you are your only limit.
Ooh, that's a good one. I do like that. Very, very good. Last but not least, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
Have faith in yourself. You are freaking amazing.
I love it. Perfect. And a great way to finish an episode on recruiting, by the way. Thank you so much for having this chat with us today, Christine. It's been so great catching up with you again. And look, in all honesty, I think you take recruiting from being this big, scary thing, and you are so wonderful at, breaking it down and being so real about it. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how confident you are. I think everyone's got a little bit of fear inside them around asking those questions. Partly because of the stigma with the industry, but partly because we're afraid of people rejecting us. So I just really encourage you, just take a couple of little tips from what Christine has done. And I love what you said about, at the end of the day, when you first started, you had to think about what were the little reasons people would do it, not the big reasons. Let's stop looking at the big picture that you can earn this massive income and you could be up on the stage and have all these trips. What are just the little things right now, the quick wins? And don't gloss over those, because right now, having a little bit of extra money in the bank account to pay for the groceries might actually be a huge win for somebody. So not impressing on them, what your dreams and goals might be, but instead seeking out what theirs are. So look, I really appreciate you, Christine. Thank you so much for diving on in with us again today and sharing your amazing wisdom and knowledge with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here. And you've really made my day with those lovely comments. So thank you.
Look, again, such an honor. And also to our beautiful listeners, thank you again for tuning on in. If you love this episode, and of course, if you know somebody who maybe is struggling a little bit with this process at the moment and needs just a little bit of reassurance, maybe a little bit of that confidence to believe in themselves right now, because you've got this, please share this episode with them. Let them listen on in. And hey, maybe just as a gift for somebody, sew into someone, love on someone, buy them a copy of Christine's book. I love that you really have put so much of your heart and soul into that beautiful book. We've been giving this away as gifts as well inside of our membership group, and everyone that's received it has just been blown away and has said how helpful it was, but just how simple it was to implement and do the steps in there that you've given them. So thank you again so much. It's so great to be able to chat with you again, and I hope we can do this again very soon. But bye for now, our beautiful listeners, and thank you again, Christine.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.